Hey everyone, and welcome back. So today we're diving into something I know a ton of you have been curious about, and that's apple cider vinegar.
Yeah, this stuff is everywhere.
Seriously, it's like taking over the internet, right? Like apple cider vinegar is going to solve all our problems,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to weight loss.
Oh, yeah, for sure. All those before and after pictures and like miracle testimonials.
Exactly. But you and I both took a deep dive into the research here to try to really separate fact from fiction. And I got to say, some of what we found was a little surprising.
Yeah, a little surprising and honestly kind of concerning.
So before we get into all the nitty-gritty details, I'm curious, what do you think? Is it all hype, or is there something to this whole apple cider vinegar craze? I know you mentioned in your notes that you were wondering where this whole thing even came from.
Yeah, like where did this all start? I mean, it feels like apple cider vinegar has been around forever, right? But this whole weight loss thing seems like a relatively new phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been around for a while, but it seems like, all the TikTok trends and the influencer posts, they've definitely amplified it.
Yeah, they've definitely taken it to a whole new level. And I think that's part of what makes it so hard to separate the truth from the noise. Because a lot of those social media claims, they're based on really small studies or preliminary research that hasn't been replicated.
Right. And, those early studies aren't necessarily wrong, but they're just, they need more investigation. One of the studies that got a lot of attention a few years back, it suggested that apple cider vinegar could help people feel fuller for longer, which, could lead to eating less. But when you look closer, the sample size was so tiny. Come on.
Yeah, you can't really draw any meaningful conclusions from that. And also, they didn't really account for other factors. Maybe people in the study were already making other changes to their diet or exercise habits.
That's a good point. So we got to look at the bigger picture, right? Which brings us to that 2024 meta-analysis from the Journal of Nutrition that we both found super interesting.
Right. And a meta-analysis is super important because it combines data from tons of studies. So it gives you a much more comprehensive view of the research landscape.
And this particular meta-analysis, what did it find? Did it support those claims about apple cider vinegar and weight loss?
Well, it looked at a bunch of different studies with really rigorous methodologies, and the conclusion was pretty clear. Apple cider vinegar does not have a significant effect on weight loss.
Okay, so no magic bullet, bummer. But it's not just that it might not work. In your notes, you had some concerns about potential downsides.
Oh, yeah, big time. One of the biggest worries is the effect on tooth enamel. Because apple cider vinegar is so acidic, it can wear away at the enamel over time, especially if people are drinking it straight.
Ouch. Yeah, I could only imagine. And it's people are so focused on the potential benefits, they don't even think about the risks.
Right. And then there's the potassium issue. Some studies have shown that consuming a lot of apple cider vinegar can actually deplete potassium levels, which can have all sorts of negative effects on your health.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah.
So definitely not something to mess around with.
And this is something a lot of people don't think about, but apple cider vinegar can actually interact with certain medications. If someone is on diuretics or insulin, it can interfere with how those medications work.
So it's even if it's natural, that doesn't mean it's safe for everyone,
Exactly. Natural doesn't automatically equal safe. It's always best to talk to a doctor before making any big changes to your diet, especially if you have any health conditions or are taking medication.
Great advice. So, okay, maybe chugging apple cider vinegar isn't the answer. But you were also curious about some other ways it can be used. You found some interesting stuff about that in your research.
Oh, for sure. While the weight loss claims are pretty much busted, apple cider vinegar can definitely be part of a healthy diet. Like you mentioned in your notes, using it to flavor food. I mean, it can make a salad dressing so much more interesting. Or a marinade for chicken or fish.
Yeah, I love it on roasted vegetables. That's a nice little tang.
Exactly. It's all about moderation. A little bit of apple cider vinegar can go a long way in terms of flavor.
So it's not the main event, but it could be a pretty awesome supporting player.
I love that. Perfect analogy.
So to wrap things up, apple cider vinegar might not be the weight loss miracle some people claim it to be, but it can still be a tasty and versatile ingredient when used thoughtfully.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And it really makes you think, though, right? And how much of what we see online about health and nutrition is actually true? And how can we, especially those of us who, are already pretty into this stuff, how can we make sure we're not just falling for the hype? Because there's so much information out there. It can be really overwhelming.
Totally. And that's something we should all be thinking about. How can we be more critical consumers of health information?
Yeah.
especially in the age of social media where everyone's an expert. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive on apple cider vinegar. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.